Good evening and welcome to the December 14th, 2023 regular meeting of the San Diego Community Power Board of Directors. I am Joe LaCava, Chair of the Board and the representative for the City of San Diego. We welcome the members of the public, community power staff, board members joining us in person today, and those joining us remotely. And I'll now call the December 14th, 2023 regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power to order. Deborah, will you please call the roll?
Chair LaCava,
Present.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, Director McCann,
Present.
Director Hensey, here, Director Aguirre, Director Parent,
Here.
Director Yamani. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And Mayor McCann, I think you need to make a statement.
I hope this is the correct statement, but currently there are no other adults in the area where I am attending from. Thank you.
We're good. He's attending via the traditional teleconferencing rule, so no statement is needed for the.
Okay,
Okay.
belt suspenders. All right, with that, let's do the pledge of allegiance. So please turn. And if you're able, face the flag, hand of your heart. Again, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Deborah said, by the way, for those of you who haven't met, Deborah is our new interim clerk of the board. Thank you for joining us, Deborah. The quorum is present, and we'll start now with special presentations and introductions. And let's also have a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that this meeting is taking place in the land of the original inhabitants of the greater San Diego region. A land acknowledgement is a critical step towards working with Native communities to create meaningful partnerships and inclusion in the stewardship and protection of their cultural resources and homelands. Let's take a moment to honor these ancestral grounds that were the traditional lands of the Kumeyaans. With that, as we do seemingly every month, we will welcome new hires. So if Karen Singh, Director of Data Analytics and IT, and Patrick Welch, Senior Legislative Manager, can join us and give us a few words.
Hello everyone, thanks for the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Kiran Singh and I joined the agency November 1st in the role of Director of Data Analytics and IT. I come to agency with over 20 years of industry experience. I am thrilled to join the agency because of the purpose that we are committed to deliver, and I'm looking forward to helping my team and collaborating with board of directors to deliver clean energy for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Board. Patrick Welch. Pleased and honored to join the team. I most recently served as Senior Director of Energy Policy for the California Municipal Utilities Association. And before that, worked for two different members of the State Senate. Looking forward to working with the board, your Community Advisory Committee and staff to coordinate and collaborate with leaders in Sacramento to deliver on your clean energy goals and achieve that affordable and reliable and clean future.
Welcome aboard, both critical positions. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
With that, are there any items to be added, withdrawn, or reordered on the agenda? Not seeing it. We'll now go to non-agenda public comment. Oops.
Item 15 has been removed from the agenda and will be deferred to another.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. So with non-agenda public comment, I want to note that the public comments submitted before the board meeting were emailed to all directors prior to the board meeting and will be posted on the website at the beginning of the meeting. Deborah, do we have any non-agenda public comments?
We do not.
All right. Move on to the consent agenda. Are there any directors that would like to pull items from the consent calendar? Not seeing any. Deborah, do we
Make a
have,
motion to approve the consent?
okay. Thank you, Mayor. We'll see if there's any public comment.
There are no public
Okay,
comments.
so we have a motion to move the consent agenda. Do I have a second? Who wants it? You want to arm wrestle? or-
Colin.
Okay. Okay, seeing no one else wishing to speak, Deborah, please call the vote.
Chair LaCava,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, Director McCann,
Aye.
Director Hensy. Yes. Director Aguirre, Director Parent,
Yes.
Director Yamani. Yes. That motion carries.
So now with the consent agenda passed, we'll move on to item 8, which is the appointment of general counsel and approval of employment agreement. So with that, I want to thank the board members, including member Colin Parent, Vice Chair Lawson Reamer, and the Community Power staff and the executive team that participated in the hiring process. And I'm pleased to announce the selection, and I should have gotten a pronunciation, but Vera Tiagi, the general counsel for San Diego Community Power. I believe she's actually on the road, probably fighting traffic. Oh, there she is. I didn't see her come in. Ms. Tiagi's experience as an environmental regulator for relationships within this industry and forward-thinking approach make her an excellent choice for this position. This contract before the board today is effective February 1st, 2024 through March 31st, 2026. And to comply with new Brown Act regulations, thank you to the city of Bell. We will mention that her base salary is $330,000 annually. Her key benefits include retirement with an employer contribution of approximately 10% annually, vacation sick time of 160 hours per year and 96 hours per year, respectively, and can be banked, technology allowance of $100 per month, car allowance of $500 per month, and health, dental, and other insurance benefits as provided to San Diego Community Power employees and their dependents. I don't think we have any other. With that, Vera, I invite you to come up and say a few words to the board members that were not part of the interview process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. I very much appreciate this opportunity. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. I just left another board meeting to join you all here, but I have been a practicing attorney for almost 20 years. And that entire time has been in the environmental sector, first as an attorney litigating actions under the California Environmental Quality Act. And then for the past 15 years or so, I have been working in the public sector. I am a very proud public servant. I believe very strongly in the power and the benefit of the community that public servants can provide. What I really appreciate most about the role is, to work in the public good, but also to create change for the public. So I think the clean energy is a new frontier. I have worked in the air quality section for most of my career, and I think clean energy is a natural transition. I'm very excited for this opportunity.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with that, we'll check to see if there's any public comment.
There are no public comments.
All right. And I'm going to take the opportunity to do the motion because the Brown Act requires very specific language. So I move to accept the recommendation to appoint Vera Tiagi as general counsel effective February 1st, 2024, and approve execution of an employment agreement in substantially the form attached hereto, with non-substantive revisions approved by the chair and reviewed and approved as to form by general counsel, and subject to successful completion of the employee onboarding process. You don't need to repeat, right?
That is perfect.
Okay. So I'll make that motion. Do we have any comments by the board or any questions you want to ask?
Second the motion.
And not see any other comments? Deborah, please call the vote.
Chair LaCava,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer,
Yes.
Director McCann,
Aye.
Director Hensy,
Yes.
Director Aguirre, Director Parent,
Yes.
Director Yamani.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Welcome aboard. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very excited.
All right, item 9 is a receive and file treasurer's report for a period ending October 31st, 2023. I asked this item to be pulled off the consent agenda to give Dr. Washington an opportunity to talk about some of the financial cash flow for the organization. So Dr. Washington, when you're ready.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair LaCava, to the directors, San Diego Community Power staff, and members of the public. I'm Dr. Eric Washington. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Deputy Chief Executive Officer at San Diego Community Power, and I'm presenting to the board and public tonight the Treasurer's Report for the period ending October 31st, 2023. Next slide. This period marks our 4 months into our fiscal year cycle. And as having one of the highest participation rates among CCAs in the state of California is a testament to how committed our customers are to staying with our program, as well as our ability to deliver on the clean, renewable energy resources as part of our mission and vision. Next slide, please. That said, based on some key decisions made by our board, we've managed to successfully contribute consistently to our reserve build toward our target of 180 days cash on hand. We reached our 90 days cash on hand ahead of schedule back in July. And I'm happy to report that as of October 31st, from a cash perspective, we landed at 153 days cash on hand, which represents 80% toward our goal of 180 days cash on hand. That's supported with access to over $100 million on our line of credit, so that we're able to respond fiscally to unexpected events as it relates to changing weather as well as volatility in the energy markets. That said, fiscal year 2024 year to date has presented some challenges for us. Although we were able to contribute toward our reserve build, we have faced some challenges. Next slide, please. This slide represents cooler than expected weather for fiscal year 2024. We had actually budgeted for a heat event. That, good news to our customers, we did not have that heat event, but what that translated into was a lower than expected net revenue for the period ending October 31st, 2023, to the tune of about $29 million below what we had projected and budgeted for. In addition to that, next slide, please. We are also continuing to face volatility in the energy markets, more specifically related to our attempt to comply with resource adequacy. We experienced a larger than expected energy expense as it related to the voluntary allocation and market offer, also known as VAMO. But nevertheless, we had the reserves to respond fiscally to that. What that translates into is a higher than expected total expenses, namely focused on energy, that was approximately 8% over what we budgeted for and also what we projected for. So next slide, please. So what that means is that from a net position perspective, we landed $60 million under where we budgeted, although we were able to contribute $232 million to that reserve bill. We'd actually targeted $293 million. And those two primary challenges that we faced in terms of lower than expected temperatures, which reduced our revenue, as well as an increase in energy costs, specifically as it relates to VAMO. In the month of October, we did experience a higher than expected invoice related to VAMO, and that was the key driver behind those energy costs coming in over what we expected year to date. Next slide, please. So again, this slide and the following slide is a comparative analysis of our budget to actual results. Overall, these changes meant that the results for the fiscal year have overall come in lower than we expected. However, San Diego Community Power had provisions in place to mitigate these challenges. Again, our reserve bill and our ability to maintain those reserves serves as a backstop in addition to our access to our line of credit. Next slide. So in concluding my presentation for the board this evening, I just kind of wanted to reiterate a couple of key matrices that we continue to watch. One, being able to continue to contribute to our reserves. Again, fiscal year to date to the tune of $230 million, with a cash position of $416 million, with a backstop of access to over $100 million to our line of credit. And overall, year to date, we landed at 85% from a cash perspective toward our reserve bill. So that being said, San Diego Community Power is positioned to continue to be a fiscally sound organization, as well as being fiscally responsible and maintaining a level of transparency when it comes to our financial position as an organization. So that will conclude my presentation, Chair. I will hand it back over to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Washington. Is there any public comment?
There are none.
Okay. So I'll turn it over to the board if you have any questions or comments on this. Not seeing any. No. Again, I asked, one of the hallmarks of this organization is the transparency in which we conduct our business so that everybody knows what we're doing. And for me, it was a good reminder of the challenges that our staff face every day in navigating even work and the volatility in the market and the challenges that they make sure that we have the adequate resources and flexibility to respond. So thank you for that good work, Dr. Washington, and everybody else that gets involved in decision making. Just want to make sure that we keep everybody apprised of how we're doing, both in terms of building that reserve so we can get the credit rating and maintain that cap flow and the best we can continue to offer a value proposition. So I think the one question I had, see if I can actually, I think there was a little bit of a jump in terms of the, apologize, I didn't have this. And the balances over 120 days, we saw a drop in, I guess would have been actually as of November 1st. And then we saw a jump up again December 1st. Is there any particular reason that that jump happened? Or was it just the accumulation of the data as it flowed in? There were,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. Yes, so you're referring to November of 2022. Is that correct?
No, this actually is listed as November 2023. That showed combined commercial and residential arrearages over 120 days at 27 million. And then
Yes.
On December 1st, it jumped to 31 million combined residential and commercial.
So yes, thanks for that question, Mr. Chair. Yes, that's definitely an area that we continue to monitor in terms of our arrearages. One of the things that we factored into our budget and our projection is uncollectible rate in anticipation of those arrearages. And I know that our customer service team is working really closely with our customers in terms of tracking and collecting on those items which we're able to collect upon. But it is built into our budget in anticipation for those arrearages at the level that we've experienced.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. This is a receive and file, so unless there's any objection, we'll just receive and file this report. And we'll move on to item 10, which is approval of a conflict of interest and ethical conduct policy. And we'll turn it over to Jen LeBron to present this item.
Good evening, Chair LaCava and members of the Board of Directors. I'm Jen LeBron, the Director of Public Affairs, and it's my honor tonight to bring forth San Diego Community Power's first conflict of interest policy for your consideration. Next slide, please. The goals of this policy center on ensuring that San Diego Community Power continues to progress to being one of the best governed and transparent public agencies in our region. This policy reinforces and reminds all who serve San Diego Community Power in their various roles about the responsibility of the public trust and our duty to provide high-quality services in an impartial manner. At the end of the day, we provide electricity and programs that power the lives of millions of people who live and work in our region. This policy aims to honor them by guiding all of us, board members, community advisory committee members, and employees alike, to be open, transparent, and responsible in our roles. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Ultimately, this policy summarizes the standards that are applicable to all who serve SDCP and goes beyond the requirements of state law in order to hold ourselves to a higher standard of transparency and fairness in our actions. While this policy is new to San Diego Community Power, it is not new for similar member agencies. The items in this policy have been based off of conflict of interest policies that have been in place and legally vetted by other public agencies. Notably, much of this policy was modeled after the City of San Diego documents. There are 7 sections that lay out the responsibilities of board members, community advisory committee members, and employees. I'll provide a brief summary about each of these sections tonight, and the full policy can be found as an attachment in your meeting packets, both here in chambers as well as in the digital packet online for anybody who may be watching there. The following slides contain key excerpts from the policy itself. While I won't be reading them verbatim, I will provide a brief summary about each of these sections. Next slide, please. The first section outlines the high-level responsibilities of public service in a broad sense. It serves as a reminder to all of those who serve that they are obligated to uphold the United States and California constitutions, as well as conduct ourselves in a way that prioritizes the public and public good. Next slide, please. The second section dives into general rules regarding conflict of interest. It calls on directors, committee members, and employees to avoid engaging in any business or transactions that could conflict with their official duties or compromise their independence or actions in their SDCP roles. Next slide, please. The third section goes into the acceptance of favors, gifts, and gratuities. All directors, committee members, and employees must comply with state law by disclosing their financial interests and gifts in the Form 700 annually. This policy goes a step beyond by outlining that any gift that could be considered influencing a director, committee member, or employee in the discharge of their duties should be returned or donated to a public charity. Next slide. The fourth section applies to SDCP employees specifically. It notes that any employee who would want to have outside employment or conduct outside business activities must provide notice and obtain departmental approval. Any outside employment or business activities shall not conflict with employee responsibilities at SDCP. Next slide, please. When we're talking about activities that could constitute a conflict, that includes using SDCP time, equipment, and assets to gain some form of advantage. Any outside business activity or employment that would cause an employee to miss work or impair quality of work is also prohibited. Next slide, please. The last section leads into the broader 5th section of the policy, which applies to all who serve SDCP in their various roles. Policy prohibits the use of one's position for personal or outside gain. It particularly notes that all who serve San Diego Community Power should not use their positions to secure unwarranted privileges for themselves or others. Next slide, please. This section is a quote from the document that specifically calls out that all who serve San Diego Community Power should not use their position to influence the review or approval of an SDCP contract, grant, or other decision for a director, committee member, or employee in their capacity as a private individual. Next slide. So what does that mean exactly? We appreciate having subject matter and industry experts who have graciously provided their time and talents to bettering SDCP, particularly those who serve on our Community Advisory Committee. It's also important for us to have a bright line that creates fairness and separation between opportunities for our subject matter and industry experts to weigh in on some items, while separating themselves from opportunities that could be perceived as using their positions to benefit themselves or the organizations they serve. Therefore, directors and CAC members will need to recuse themselves from the discussion or planning for grants or contracting processes, as well as recuse themselves from voting on items that pertain to any grant or contract that relates to their work outside San Diego Community Power. Next slide. The sixth section dictates the protection of confidential information, and that confidential information that may be gained in service to SDCP should not be used for speculation or personal gain. It also creates guidelines barring favoritism and nepotism. Directors, committee members, or employees soliciting campaign contributions from SDCP employees and the endorsement products. Next slide, please. Finally, the last section outlines the responsibilities and penalties for violating elements of this policy. Ultimately, those who are found guilty or liable may be subject to censure or removal from their role, including termination from employment. Next slide, and the last one, I promise. The conflict of interest and ethical conduct policy is a major step for our young agency. Having this policy codified by you, our board of directors, and followed by all who have made the choice to serve our fellow San Diegans will help solidify practices that promote transparency and fairness. I want to thank each of you for reviewing the policy and request that you approve it today. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have after we go to public comment.
Before we do, can you share with us what the CAC,
Pardon me?
the action by the CAC?
Oh, yes, the CAC had unanimously voted to recommend that you approve this policy.
Thank you, Jen. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for the presentation and your good work on that. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
We do not. So at the risk of dominating this meeting, I'm going to make the motion to move staff recommendation with one amendment. And that is the section on solicitation of campaign contributions from employees. To delete the sentence that says this provision should not prohibit a director, committee member, or employee from requesting political contributions from employees if the solicitation is part of a solicitation made to a significant segment of the public, which may include employees of CP. That's a provision that the city of San Diego does not allow that. And it also has vagueness about significant segment, what constitutes significant segment. As someone who is familiar about how databases and emails go out, it's pretty clear about who's on that list, and I would not want anybody to feel uncomfortable. And we do have the sentence that says this provision shall not prohibit a director, committee member, or employee from making a contribution. Yes, preventing anybody from making a solicitation. So that would be my recommendation with deleting that one sentence, and I can pass this along if people need to see it.
If we could go back to that on the.
I don't know, did it show up in your presentation?
That specific section was not in the presentation itself. But if you've got your documents in front of you, I can figure out which section it is.
There's no, unfortunately, no, it's one second to last page. What the city of San Diego's attitude is, you do your best efforts to cleanse any email lists of employees or CAC members. They, of course, can attend events, they can contribute. You just can't solicit, so.
A comment.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. There, okay, thanks. I'm comfortable with that only because there's a clause here that says shall not directly solicit political contribution from an employee of SDCP, with knowledge that the person from whom the contribution is solicited is employee of SDCP. So I think that creates enough, clarity that it is that if this is unintentional, that we're not. I think your major point is don't put people in a database know that they're in the database, and then say, oh, I'm sending them an email as part of the database. If they accidentally get it because you didn't know they're an employee, what could you do? But you
Right.
should do your best to not put employees in the database.
That's exactly right.
I think makes sense, so.
Just a question, if they subscribe to your email list, that's all right.
That's all right. Yeah. You see if they did on their own. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't think that would be consistent with the text as being proposed by the chair.
If they subscribe.
If they opt in.
So if someone were to opt into a database and then subsequently the campaign committee would to send a solicitation to that database without that provision that's in the current draft, that solicitation would be in violation of the policy.
And I think you're right. I think you'd need like a comma that says unless the individual voluntarily subscribed to the database or something like that. Because you're right, the way that's written now, it would not be allowed.
I would support that amendment if it's consistent with the spirit of the conflict of interest code. I have had this happen.
Yeah.
And so I think if they've opted in, then it's important that we're not violating our code of conduct.
Say that again, Kelly.
I've had an employee of City Hall opt in for my communications and I didn't know that they had, and they wanted to be made aware. So if I sent out an email asking for donations, then it would be if it was an STCP employee instead, it would be in violation of the code of conduct.
I also want to say, to point out too, that without that provision, if someone were to, in addition to signing up on a email distribution, if they were to follow someone's social media accounts, political social media accounts, and there would be solicitations posted on there, arguably that would also be in violation of the policy. And I think, which I don't think is the intent, nor do I think it's the intent of the chair or maybe not, but I don't think people want to create a new expectation that they're to look through all of their social media followers for agency employees and remove them. In fact, we would be probably prohibited from removing them for the recent court cases about blocking or social media stuff. So while I appreciate the intent of the chair's suggestion here, I think I think that the language in here as written provides some useful language to avoid those sorts of unintended consequences while also preserving I think quite appropriate prohibition on direct solicitations to employees for contributions.
Can you say that again in engineer's language?
Yeah. So I think it's good to have a rule that says you can't solicit employees of the agency for contributions. I think that's like a good policy, right? And if we didn't have that written policy, I would certainly be abiding by that as a practice, right? But I think it's also true that there are a variety of ways in the modern world in which people are subject to viewing a solicitation, right? Whether they follow someone on social media, they hear something in a meeting, or a presentation, if they as well as emails, right? And so I think the provision that's listed here that says, listen, like you can do that as long as it's to like a broad distribution, I think is like an appropriate exception to that prohibition to avoid an obligation by directors or others to have to like have complete knowledge of the total recipients of all those potential solicitations. Right. And again, I mean, it's not just the email systems is like relatively easy. You kind of look through and try to mark some folks. I mean, that's like possible. But when we're looking for other things, social media things, it's much more challenging.
Or you do a talk.
Or do a talk. Yeah. I mean, I have had situations just in the last few months where I've been like at a Democratic club meeting and said, hey, everybody, thanks for inviting me. You should, hope everyone makes a contribution. And like,
honestly don't know if there were some community power employees in the room at the time. You know, like maybe there were, I don't know. Some of them, I'm involved in some organizations with some of them, right? So, so anyway, so I think that kind of, the language is written here, I think is an appropriate thing to avoid an obligation that's not realistic for people to be able to achieve.
Do you have any problem with the language of, what's the thing that tripped me up? Significant segment. That's why I think that's part of where I got tripped up as well, as significant segment. If I send an to address member Hinzies, I think if somebody subscribes and you don't know they subscribe, the first sentence covers you. But how many people have to be on an email list before you've hit that significant?
That's a very fair question. I'm not sure what the answer to that would be, but I think whether, you know, who would be the regulator of those things, right? I mean, like, I think, you know, putting the language in there and expecting a good faith and implementation of that and following that, I think is probably you know, if it turns out that someone was sending, you know, an email to like 3 people and 2 of them were community power, you know, employees, I think we could bring that up and that person would be embarrassed and be subject to censure, right?
Member Hinsey.
I think it's less about the significant segment, and perhaps we can change the language to remove or add in addition to significant segment, or if that employee has opted in to the setting, if it's in person, to the channel, if it's social media, or to the email list.
Oh, so
Would
like
you feel more
after the
comfortable?
public comma, or they opted in,
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, I mean,
I think I'm actually more comfortable withdrawing because I'm not hearing any strong support. A member parent is offering some valid concerns. Member Hinsey has talked about another scenario that could make it awkward for us.
I think we could add we could add solicitations made to a segment of the public, comma, or the employee, you know, opted in or something like that, or.
Honestly, I think if you just left that as it is, the
Yeah.
only thing that I would imagine you have a concern about is that the word significant segment's ambiguous.
Well, the city of San Diego has pretty strong language and that's what kind of inspired me, but I'm happy to drop it and go through an election cycle or two. It's like, Member Yamani,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Has this been reviewed by our legal counsel?
the policy?
Yeah.
Yes.
It has been, and that's why it's here. He agreed with all the narratives or the language and then, okay.
But we have the right to go beyond, but so, okay.
Well,
so-
it might be helpful, maybe just clarify for the record that legislative intent is that significant segment is significant.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna, since there wasn't a second yet, I will amend the motion to move the staff recommendation.
Obviously,
With no other comments? And I appreciate the dialogue. We don't often engage in that, so I think that was
Yeah.
important piece. So we have motion by myself, a second by the vice chair. So Deborah, please call the vote. Oh, did you want?
No, just taking
Okay.
notes.
Deborah, please call the roll. Call the vote.
Chair LaCava,
Yes.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer,
yes,
Director Can,
Aye.
Director Hensy,
yes,
Director Aguirre, Director Parent,
Yes.
Director Yamani. Yes, that motion carries.
All right. I just want to make sure everybody is aware that it applies to us as much as everybody else. We want to be careful about that, but thank you to my fellow board members for that discussion. We'll move on to item 11. Request approval of a regional energy network, often called REN, application to the California Public Utilities Commission. Our friends at the TPUC. So with that, Colin, and Tina Trang as well, or just yourself?
Tina is available online.
Online. Okay, when you're ready.
Thank you. As the chair said, we're here to ask the board's approval for staff to submit an application to the CPUC to REN in San Diego. Before we begin, I did want to thank our consultant partners on this effort, the Energy Coalition. They've helped guide us through this last 9 months and provide really invaluable input. And I also wanted to thank our partners at the county staff there who are hoping to enter this journey with in the REN. They have been fantastic as well. And last, very importantly, I want to make sure that we give Sheena Tran the credit that she deserves. This is an incredible lift, and I can honestly say we wouldn't have the products that we have before you today were not for her hard work and her commitment to bringing the REN to San Diego. So she isn't here today. She's at home, not feeling well, doing her best to not spread germs. We'll appreciate it, but she's available to answer questions in the presentation. Next slide. So this is the fifth time we have brought an agenda item on the REN to you all this calendar year, but our discussions on the REN with you all and your predecessors started back in May of 2022, where we raised the idea of identifying and securing external funding for energy efficiency. And in June, we proposed the inclusion of one full-time employee to focus on this, as well as a consultant funding for approved. And then we brought on Sheena and Tech to do the hard work. And this year, as I mentioned, we've come to you all 4 times before today. And most recently was in October, where we provided a comprehensive presentation on programs, governance structure, budgets, and the engagement that we undertook. In that October meeting, we received very helpful feedback on additional engagement that was recommended from board members. We were able to complete a lot of that engagement. Many folks we will likely talk to after submission, and some we may even talk to after, if we get approval, after board approval, the CPUC approval, with the idea that with actual programs in hand, we may get a little more traction when we're doing our engagement with the stakeholders. Next slide. So this is a good transition to talk about regional support. And since our earliest conversations on this topic, we've heard nothing but support for this effort. I've mentioned before that the region attempted unsuccessfully to start a REN almost a decade ago, more than a decade ago, actually. And as a result, we're the only truly populated region in the state that doesn't have a REN. There is a recognized need for these programs to serve underserved communities and to provide energy efficiency upgrades and the bill reductions that result from those upgrades. And that recognition of the need was showed up in the 44 letters of support that we received for the effort. All of your cities in the county are obviously included here, as well as 5 other local cities. We had a lot of support from the business sector, Chamber of Commerce, EDC, other regional agencies like SANDAG, Port of San Diego, the Air Pollution Control District, as well as labor and IBEW 569, the building trades, and then our regional educational institutions are definitely interested in and supportive of our workforce development efforts. So our community colleges, Palomar, Southwestern. And then lastly, we had a very strong showing of support from the environmental advocacy and climate justice organizations shown here on our pretty logo slide. Next slide. And so with this, that's my last slide here, talk about next steps. Before we get there, I do want to mention, since we last were in front of the board, we presented to the California Energy Efficiency Coordinating Council, which is made up of the CPUC staff, as well as all the CPUC program administrators, so the IOUs and the RENs, and received feedback and implemented or adjusted our proposed programs based on that feedback. If we receive approval here today, we will look to file a motion with the CPUC the first week of January. At that point, it starts a CPUC-led review process where they will solicit feedback from stakeholders and go through a review and provide us feedback. Ideally, we would hope to receive approval towards the latter half of 2024 to set us up to have programs in place at the end of 2024 or early 2025. And that concludes my presentation.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you and Sheena's very good work and everybody that I'm sure contributed to this. Pretty remarkable number of letters. See something like that. Deborah, do we have any public comment?
We do have one person who's raised their hand, Serena Pelka.
Hello, this is Serena Pelka from Climate Action Campaign. I'm just calling in to again share our excitement and support for the formation of the Regional Energy Network. SDCP continues to show its commitment to customer equity and to programming that really supports energy efficiency, electrification, local energy generation, and workforce development for its customers. And we really do see the REN as a strong path to continue to do so. And we're also particularly thrilled to see that the REN will cover the region in its entirety. So Climate Action Campaign is really happy to share our ongoing support for the formation of the REN. We look forward to the application being submitted and just wanted to congratulate staff and SDCP for their hard work on this application and look forward to next steps. Thank you.
That's it.
Okay, I'm sorry. So now I'll turn it over to the board members for comments and we will need a motion.
Yeah, this is really exciting and it's hard to rally that many people to say that we all agree to doing something, but really there's no reason why we haven't done this and didn't do it 10 years ago. So thank you for the focused effort and I would move approval.
Second, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Keep calling you members and you're actually directors, so you on that. Any other comments?
I
Yeah.
just want to say the team did a great job. So thank you. Yeah.
Well done.
We didn't have it done until now because we didn't have a call on it.
Right?
And
yeah, I mean, you did a number of presentations, you did clearly a lot of work on that, so thank you. So with that, we have a motion by Director Hensy and a second by Director Yamani. Deborah, please call the vote.
Chair LaCava,
Present.
Vice Chair Watson Reamer,
Yes.
Director McCann, Director McCann,
Hi, can you hear me?
Director Hensy.
Hi,
Yes. Director Aguirre, Director Parent,
yes.
Director Yamani. Yes. That motion carries.
All right, thank you, Deborah. Again, thank you, Colin. I will move on to item 12, receive update on regulatory and legislative affairs. Hernandez, Aisha Cervantes, and Stephen Gunther.
There's only room for two of us.
Okay.
So we'll have a little swap out in a minute, but
All right.
good evening, everyone. Laura Fernandez, Director of Regulatory and Legislative Affairs. I wanted to provide you an update with what ultimately happened in Sacramento this year. Next slide, please. And maybe public comment now? No? Okay, next slide. Perfect, right here. So as I shared with you all previously, the administration in February put out a budget change proposal that would have created a new central procurement process to allow the Department of Water Resources or investor and utilities to procure resources on behalf of other load serving entities like CCAs. The original proposal would have also created capacity payments that would have functioned as sort of a third penalty for load serving entities that aren't able to meet RA requirements. And it also would have expanded CPUC jurisdiction over CCA procurement autonomy. These same proposals were put into a policy bill, AB 1373, that was carried by Chair Garcia. Ultimately, the proposals didn't get into the budget by June 30th, and AB 1373 was taken up after the summer recess. AB 1373 was significantly improved from the initial introduction of the bill, and this is the only bill that we opposed for most of the legislative session. So the final version of the bill did establish a central procurement function, but for front stop procurement, it is within the Department of Water Resources, which this was kind of our last remaining ask on the bill. As I mentioned earlier, an earlier version of these proposals would have had the IOUs in that function, and we really didn't want our competitors in that function. So that was kind of our last remaining ask towards the end of session, was to have the IOUs not be in that central procurement function. So once we got that amendment towards the very end of session, we did remove our opposition to the bill and went neutral. Another concern we had with central procurement is that it would have impeded on our ability to procure on behalf of our community. So the other really important change that we got was for backstop procurement, allowing load serving entities like CCAs an opportunity to procure resources on behalf of our customers before it's ordered to be done through a central procurement entity. So the final version of the bill does have a 6-month timeframe to kind of give us that chance to do procurement on behalf of our customers rather than having it be through a central procurement entity. Another major improvement to the bill is that originally, as I mentioned, there would have been sort of a third penalty on top of the penalties we already pay for an RA deficiency. And the final version of the bill takes into account any penalty that's already paid, any TRISO backstop. And so it's kind of a net rather than a stacked third penalty. So it's that's ultimately potentially beneficial for ratepayers to not have to pay that third amount on top. And the last major part of the bill is around IRP jurisdiction. Earlier versions would have required CCAs to submit bundled procurement plan to the CPUC, which is not something that we do today, but the final version just codifies what's existing practice at the CPUC today. All in all, we are really pleased with the progress we made in getting the bill amended over the course of the session, and it ultimately landed in a place that better protects CCA procurement autonomy and keeps ratepayer impacts in mind. Next slide, please. So SDCP supported two other bills that were ultimately signed into law. One is a bill that was flagged by our general counsel. Thank you for that. It would have allowed teleconferencing for public meetings in a way similar to the rules that were used during the COVID emergency, but this bill was ultimately amended to not apply to entities like SDCP. The other bill is about timely interconnection. This is an issue that's really a problem in PG&E service area. It's not as big of a problem down here currently, but basically this law will require timely interconnection of customer load, and it requires some reporting for the investor utilities that are falling behind in this area. Next slide, please. We also took a position on a bill about CEQA review for transmission projects, but it was ultimately vetoed by the governor. But this bill was authored by former SDCP board member and now Senator Padilla. And then we also took support positions on 3 bills that didn't make it through the legislative cycle. One was a bill regarding bidirectional charging for EVs. One was another one that was very similar to the Brown Act bill I mentioned earlier. And then finally, there was another bill regarding interconnection time limit reporting that also did not make it through this year in the legislature. Next slide, please. So I also want to provide 2 updates on our federal activities. First, you might recall that earlier this year, our CEO, Karen Burns, requested during our flying to Washington, D.C., that Congressman Scott Peters lead an effort to send a letter to federal agencies to ensure that CCAs would be eligible for funding flowing from the Inflation Reduction Act. And Chair LaCava, I recall at a prior board meeting, you had asked if we would get a response to that letter. And we did get a response from the EPA, and it had some really nice language in it. I put some of it on the slide here. And also both of the letters are in the board packet. So we were really pleased with their response. And then the other item I wanted to mention is that we have endorsed some federal legislation authored by Congressman Levin entitled the Clean Energy and Transmission Acceleration Act. And a quote from our CEO, Karen Burns, was included in the press release regarding the legislation that just came out yesterday. And you can see that quote right there. Next slide, please. Lastly, I wanted to provide you an update on the Energy Resource Recovery Account proceeding at the CPUC. This is the proceeding that approves SDG&E's revenue requirement as well as their sales forecasts and PCIA rates. We're heavily involved in this proceeding each year since it impacts our ability to compete with SDG&E. We have a team of attorneys and consultants who are really awesome that they really closely review the work papers submitted by SDG&E, and we engage accordingly. One of the main issues this year was that SDG&E was not forecasting their RA sales, and just today the CPUC finalized a decision from the CPUC that agreed with our position and ordered SDG&E to forecast their RA sales in 2024. And the benefit to us is that it'll be a reduction in PCIA portfolio costs of $36.7 million, and most of this will go to CCA customers as a benefit, and this reduction in cost will be implemented in January 2024 rates. But this is just a very small piece of the overall rates picture, and more on that will be shared in the next item on the agenda, and I don't want to steal thunder from that team. So that's all I have, but don't worry, my team isn't done, and I hope you're still with me because next Stephen is going to share some really awesome news that we just got from the CPUC today. It's even better than 36 million, but I won't steal his thunder, so take it away, Stephen.
Laura, good evening, board. My name is Stephen Gunther, Senior Regulatory Analyst. Next slide, please. Despite the name, this is a very exciting update. This decision was actually voted earlier today, and it avoids at least $100 million in costs that would have been incurred on our ratepayers. So I'll take you a few minutes to explain kind of what the background was and how we got to that decision. Next slide, please. So at a very high level background, in 2019, the CPUC ordered load serving entities to procure additional resource adequacy capacity. After that, with the growth of CCAs within the state, a lot of those customers that capacity was procured on behalf of had moved from IOU service to CCA. So the commission recognized this imbalance that capacity didn't follow the customers to their new service provider. So they created or issued decision 2205-015, which allowed a one-time provision for the CCAs to purchase that RA at a fair price based on their load at that time. Now, the timing that made this unique for SDCP was at the time of the decision, SDCP and CEA had planned and approved expansion, although those customers hadn't yet moved into our service. And this was the unincorporated county and National City. Next slide, please. So looking into the actual decision language, that one-time provision is based on the mutual agreed upon load between the IOU CCA as effective of the date of the decision. We had interpreted that to mean that we could use our 2023 year ahead RA load forecast because that is the forecast that includes those customers that were going to be coming into our service territory with the county and National City. Already filed with the CPUC, it was agreed upon. SDG&E knew those customers were departing, so that's how we interpreted that mutually agreed upon load. SDG&E really focused on the effective date of the decision language and were unwilling to negotiate the RA capacity based on any amount that wasn't the exact load share that we had at the time of the decision. So we couldn't reach an agreement with SDG&E, and because of that, in October of last year, we filed a petition to modify the decision to clarify that language, specifically allowing the use of that 2023 year ahead load forecast to be the determinant of what our load share was. Next slide, please. So in August of this year, the CPUC issued a proposed decision that denied our petition for modification. That did not stop us. We continued to advocate on our ratepayers' behalf, doing everything we could, including our very formal open comments on the proposed decision. We held meetings with commission staff, reached out to educate other policymakers about the potential negative impact this would have on our ratepayers. Specifically, we pointed and were able to demonstrate that without this modification that we were asking for, customers would end up paying twice for the same capacity. First, they'd be paying for it through their CCA because we now have to procure that additional capacity on their behalf. But they're still paying for it through the excess SDG&E capacity that was bought on their behalf through the power charge and difference adjustment. So with this, paying twice for the same capacity, this would cost ratepayers conservative estimates of over $100 million over the next 12 years. So like I said, we continue to advocate on this really negative impact this would have on customers and make the case. And the proposed decision was on the commission's October 12th agenda to be voted through, but that was withdrawn from the agenda of just a few days before that business meeting. Next slide, please. So in November, the CPUC issued a new proposed decision that granted the claim CPA to modify. And I want to take a moment to just highlight how rare this is that the commission had a proposed decision and then withdrew it from the agenda and then took a complete 180 and went from denying to granting the petition that we were asking for. So this was very rare, not something we see very often, but it was a great win for our team and for our ratepayers ultimately. So after the proposed decision, we continued to advocate in support of this proposed decision and filed reply comments. I also want to thank Mayor Gloria and the city of San Diego provided a letter to the CPUC to additionally provide that support and highlight how important this is to our ratepayers. And like I said earlier today, the CPUC voted to approve that proposed decision, making it final and officially granting our petition. And ultimately, like I mentioned, that now final decision allows SDCP to purchase the additional 36 megawatts of system RA capacity and ultimately saving our ratepayers tens of millions of dollars. So that is the saga of that very confusingly long process that we went through, but we won, so that's the important part.
Great, good evening. Can you hear me all right? All right, so I assume you thought you were done hearing about the net billing tariff, but tonight I am here to give you an update. Tonight, I'm presenting on the decision that addresses the remaining proceeding issues. And this was adopted on November 16th. And so here are a few of the, well, actually, these are all the topics that were covered in that decision. So the decision establishes a successor tariff to the virtual net energy metering tariff. And the CPUC is calling that successor tariff the virtual net billing tariff. And then it also establishes a successor tariff for the net energy metering aggregation sub-tariff, which the CPUC refers to the new tariff as the aggregation sub-tariff. It also addresses billing improvements, consumer protections, prevailing wage requirements for contractors, principles to evaluate the net billing tariff, and it closes out this proceeding. I'm going to focus on these three bolded items tonight, as I think these are the key changes to get into. So first, if you're unfamiliar with the virtual net billing tariff, actually, let me take one step back just for some context. I'm talking about virtual net billing tariff and the energy metering aggregation tariff tonight. Those together constitute about 2% of customers that are enrolled in SDCP service. So I thought you'd appreciate that context. But to define the virtual net billing tariff, it's largely utilized by multifamily properties, and it's distinct from single family NBT as the on-site generation. And you know, an apartment complex that has solar, that electricity doesn't flow directly to the tenant meter. It usually just flows directly back onto the grid. And so this tariff ensures that tenants receive compensation for that building's solar production instead of all of that just going to the building owner. Next slide. And to define what the aggregation sub-tariff is, this one is largely utilized by agricultural and municipal customers. So you could see the image up there. You have a farm and there's different meters on the various properties for pumps. And so this just allows a single customer who has meters across adjacent properties or contiguous properties to earn export compensation for all of those meters. Next slide. So the big purpose of creating these successor tariffs for VNEM and NEMA was to align them with the net billing tariff export compensation regime. So this should look familiar to you, but now for both the virtual net billing tariff and the aggregation sub-tariff, their export compensation rates are based off of the much lower avoided cost calculator rate. And they also have an adder to ease the transition from today's compensation to the ACC rates, but SDG&E and non-residential customers are ineligible. And then in terms of import rates for the virtual net billing tariff, again, that's the one speaking to multifamily properties. Any eligible customers can enroll in any eligible time of use rate. And then non-residential customers can enroll in any available rate. And then sorry, that should say aggregation sub-tariff, that second bullet. But that residential customers can enroll in a highly differentiated time of use rate, rather they're required to. And then non-residential customers can enroll in any available time of use rate. Next slide. And then a few points on storage. So customers can add storage to their existing system without altering their tariff status. They can operate their systems, including their storage, to serve on-site load during outages. And grid charging of on-site batteries is still prohibited, but the CPUC did decide to establish a process. So this rule may change in the future. Next slide. So the next steps. So for those who want to get in under the current VNEM or NEMA regime and get that higher export compensation, they need to do so by midnight on February 13th of 2024. And then we have a bit of time before this gets implemented, March 31st, 2025.
And temporary service will be provided on the current tariffs until the successor tariffs go into place. And then for legacy treatment, the transition to the new tariff will occur when the legacy period ends. And just something to point out is for those who enrolled in VNEM or NEMA after April 15th, 2023, they have a 9-year legacy period. Anyone who had enrolled in VNEM or NEMA prior to April 15th, 2023, they have a 20-year legacy period. So at any rate, when those periods end, then they'll be transitioned. Oh yeah, and then here's another one to share tonight. So the CPUC acknowledges that net energy metering and net billing tariff bills are really hard for customers to understand. And so CCA successfully advocated to change some decision in the language that spoke to billing improvement workshops. Originally, that language didn't speak to CCA customer billing improvements. And so SDCP led 2 conversations with CPUC President Alice Reynolds, and that resulted in getting the language changed. So we will look forward to participating in those workshops starting in April of 2024. And that wraps up the regulatory and legislative update for our team.
Well, you packed a lot in, and congratulations. It's some clearly amazing work. So thank you for that. So first, do we have any public comment on this item?
We do not.
Oh, okay, well, I'll turn it over to the board members. This is a receive and on the update, so we don't need a motion. Are there any comments? Any of the board members? I'm not seeing any. So I'll close by saying thank you again for your big wins. Anytime you want to bring $100 million savings, you know, that. So, but thank you very much for your work. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 13, which is to receive an update on the 2024 rate power charge indifference adjustment. Gotta love that name. PCIA and projected changes. And we'll turn it over, I believe, to Aaron Liu and Lucas Kuka to present this item. So when you gentlemen are ready.
Good evening, Chair McCullough, directors. My name is Lucas Utos. I'm the Senior Director of Data Analytics and Customer Operations, alongside my colleague.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Aaron. Super happy to be here.
Tonight we'll be presenting on the update with regard to 2024 rate and power indifference adjustment, projected changes for the upcoming year. Next slide, please. So the overview of the presentation tonight will be centered around the rates timeline, the rate setting process overview, the 2024 rate setting mechanics for San Diego Community Power, the 2024 commodity rate projections, and certainly the next steps. And with that, I'll pass the baton over to Aaron now to walk us through our presentation.
Again, thank you everybody for being here. I'm super excited. This is my first presentation to the board, so super happy to be here. I'll start with the timeline, but just as kind of, I do want to say all the graphs and numbers you're going to see here are illustrative. None of the numbers are final yet, so just have that in mind. Starting with the rates timeline, just kind of to set where we are. The bookends of the timeline are board adoption of rates in February of each year. Where we are today is December 14th. We're providing an update to the board, and on January 1st, 2024, SDG will be implementing their generation rates as well as their PCIA. Next slide, please. So let's start with an overview of the rate setting process. Let's set the stage and talk about the guiding principles as well of the rate development policy that was adopted on November 17th, 2022. The objectives and the general criteria are listed as follows on this slide. And as we go through our rate setting process, we are trying to consider all these objectives and priorities and balance all these. at the same time as much as possible. So let's talk a little bit more about the different components of SDCP's rates. So we do have the generation costs, the power charge and different adjustment or PCIA, franchise fees, as well as SDG&E's delivery component of the costs. So the top right table here is just illustrative example of the residential time of use rate for SDCP compared to SDG&E's and the different rate components. Next, let's jump a little bit more into the PCIA rate. It's set annually and it does include above market costs related to utility procurement made before customers were enrolled into CCAs. So the second graphic on the bottom right shows how at a high level, how the PCIA is calculated. Franchise fees are also collected from customers for the non-exclusive right of SDG&E system in public streets and highways. And just as a reminder, to be competitive, the board approved a 3% discount in rates for SDCP customers compared to SDG&E rates in the last rate setting session. So with that overview, we're going to jump a bit more into the mechanics of rate setting in prep for 2024. Equity is at top of mind and a very important objective of SDCP's rate development policy and one of our top priorities. We saw that in the previous presentation on the REN, and here it is again. First, I want to define difference between equity and equality. The definitions are here. Equity recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities needed to reach an equal outcome. In contrast, equality means each individual or group of people is given the same resources or opportunities. So the graphic here at the bottom left gives a very good illustrative example of the difference between equality and equity. In our rate setting process, we are again recommending stratification of rates, and that will help maintain a fair, equitable, and balanced rate structure that does not create winners and losers across our customers. And to illustrate that, if you take a look and compare the right bottom table to the graphic on the left, it's a pretty fair illustration of keeping the same value proposition across the different customers in terms of maintaining trifurcated rates. Another way to take a look at what trifurcation means, this slide will provide more detail on that. So SDCPs enroll customers at different times, and those customers are assigned different PCIA with corresponding resource vintage years. So the customers will have the same commodity and generation rate and franchise fees, but different PCIA rates. So if you take a look at the illustrated table to the right of the slide, you'll see that the customers have different vintages across 2020, 21, and 22. They have identical commodity rates and the same franchise fees, but the PCIA rates would have to be different in order to maintain the same discount across all the customers. So really the takeaway is that, again, to maintain a fair discount for all customers, 3 sets of rates have to be developed and software. So as a preview of the 2024 commodity or / generation rate projections, here is a illustrative SDG&E rates table effective January 1st, 2024. SDG&E filed these rate changes in its 2024 sales forecast application back in May. They provided an update in October, and they filed another update in November. We just want to stress and note the significant changes between all of these filings in terms of the numbers. So overall, rates are projected to decrease across all customer classes with an 17% average decrease across the system. SDG&E is stating that the main reason for the rate decreases in 2024 is that they are projecting a decrease in procurement costs. There's also drivers in adjustment between SDG&E balancing accounts as well as actualization of their forecast costs. So I want to conclude our presentation by talking a little bit about next steps. Staff will continue to monitor updates from SDG&E as well as the Public Utilities Commission to develop and set 2024 SDCP rates. SDG&E's commodity/generation and PCIA rates will be finalized last week of December. And in January 2024, staff will recommend 2024 SDCP rates to the board for adoption. In the meantime, items to consider include staff's recommendation to continue trifecta rates, projected SDG&E rates will decrease, and final SDCP generation rates and PCIA rates will determine which way SDCP's 2024 rates will ultimately go.
And that actually concludes our presentation tonight. More than like to take any questions and or comments.
All right, thank you, Lucas and Aaron. Do we have any public comment?
There are no comments.
All right, this is just an update. We don't need a motion. Do we have any questions or comments by the board? Director Hinsey?
So with the 17% projected decrease in SDG&E's commodity rates, we wouldn't expect to see that much of a decrease in our customer rates because we still have to factor in PCIA and the other charge as well. Is that correct?
That is correct, but again, I think as Aaron mentioned, these are based on the November update. The CPUC actually had its final meeting today to essentially approve the 2024 error by the error application by SDG&E. And from today throughout the remainder of December, SDG&E is going to consolidate multiple filings into one advice letter that will give rise to their would-be rates as of 1/1/2024. But again, the point that Aaron was making was the fact that between October and November, we saw material swings. And so all eyes are definitely on December 29th when that advice letter comes out.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Not seeing any. Without objection, we'll simply receive the update. Thank you for your good work and giving us this update, and we'll look forward to that conversation at our next meeting in January, what will be setting those rates. Right. Moving right along, we'll go on to item 14, which is approval of the CDH LLC power purchase agreement. We'll turn it over to Byron Lothberg to present this item. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. So we have to use Managing Director. You hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, we're here with a contract for your approval. I just want to give a shout out to Kenny Key, our Director of Power Contracts, who led negotiations on this. Couldn't be here tonight. That's why I'm presenting instead. If you don't like it, it's his fault. If you like it, like me. Anyway, we're very, very excited to bring this contract to you. It's been in negotiation for a few months. It's with CDH and all LLC, core CDH. You have the name. So it's for a solar and storage facility. Thank you. For a 160 megawatt solar and 160 megawatt storage facility paired in San Bernardino County. So next slide, please. Thank you. So a little bit of background here. I think we're pretty familiar with organizational goals at this point, but as we know, we'd like to be 75% renewable by 2027, by 2035 sooner. And as we do that, obviously we try to do as much as we can under long-term PPAs, both for rate stability and to contain costs, but also to support development of new resources. Obviously, that's why we're here there. So that's what we're bringing to you. Again, we run. I think we reviewed our year in review last week. We run 7 solicitations for renewable energy resources this year. Some were large, or small and local. So this came through. I think this actually came through bilateral outreach we were doing as well. But it was kind of worked into the review process solicitations as we reviewed. And then also we have compliance obligations both for renewables and also for long-term purchases as well. These help us meet our organizational goals, exceed those of regulatory compliance, obviously, but these will help achieve those goals as well. Next slide, please. So this project itself, as I mentioned, 160 megawatts of solar with 160 megawatts of 4-hour lithium-ion battery. It's in, if you can go back one slide, please. Thank you. It's in San Bernardino County. So not quite local by definition, a couple counties over, but given, given it's not local, it's just about as local we can get. You'll see on the map there, it's just also about as far east as we can get, still in California, but still kind of in the SoCal area, and it's still in the relatively in the labor market here. So the interconnection is a little interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of backlog, I guess, in the ISO interconnection queue. Some developers are looking to interconnect that we've seen in Imperial Irrigation District next door. This actually is interconnecting through Wampa, which runs some transmission lines just again outside the ISO as well in this area. So they're interconnecting there, and then the developer and then the project will then deliver the energy to the California ISO, interconnect through Wampa. So it's a bit of an advantage we found, and some developers finding to get creative and to bring projects online sooner than the ISO interconnection process will allow. So there is a little wrinkle here. We'll need import rights to claim the RA from this resource. We have those, and I feel good about allocating them to this resource. Next slide, please. So key terms, again, this is all output from this 160 megawatt hybrid or solar plus storage facility. So we're getting the renewable energy, the capacity, and ancillary services as well. With the use of the battery, it'll be a 20-year contract with a guaranteed commercial operation date in March of 2026. And then obviously, we have contractual protections if the project is delayed or doesn't achieve all of its milestones and requirements. Next slide, please. So staff analysis here, obviously, contributes to our goal to be renewable with 480,000 megawatt hours per year of renewable energy. We're also getting energy management, kind of load shifting. Again, it's a solar facility, so we're shifting in with the battery. Most of those deliveries, a lot of those deliveries in the evening when we need energy more, when energy is currently more carbon intensive. And we also get capacity attributes with that. And then as I mentioned, the ancillary services, regulations, and otherwise that we can, the battery can provide. Another benefit online in 2026, it'll allow us to meet our midterm reliability obligations as we're familiar with now. For our obligations and new build capacity obligations with the PUC. Obviously, we don't discuss pricing in this public setting, but it is competitive, provides value to our customers. Chair LaCava and Director McCann were involved in a working group session that reviewed this and recommend that we move forward with negotiation and execution. So here we are. So the final slide, again, there's a note on workforce development and community benefits. So this will provide 250 construction jobs throughout the 2-year construction window and 11 permanent jobs thereafter. They and Vidal as well as developer community labor, signed PLA, and also has made a $500,000 commitment as we discussed in the previous board meetings to a community benefit fund to be administered by STCP. That's the end of the presentation, but I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
All right, thank you, Byron, for the presentation, your work, and thank Kenny for the good work on this. Deborah, do we have any public comment on this?
We do not.
All right, so I'll turn it over to the board members for comments. And this one, we do need a motion.
I'll move to approve the PPA.
I'll second the motion.
I'll second.
Little slow there. Okay. Not seeing any other comments or questions, so we have a motion to move the staff recommendation by Director Parent and a second by Director Himsey. And with that, Deborah, please call the vote.
Chair McCava,
Yes.
LaCava, sorry.
Yep.
Vice Chair Lawson Reamer.
Yes.
Director McCann,
Aye.
Director Hensey,
Yes.
Director Aguirre, Director Parent,
Yes.
Director Yamani.
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion carries.
All right, thank you. As a reminder, as we noted at the beginning, that item 15 has been returned to staff. With that, we're done with that portion of the agenda, and we will go on to reports. So, from our CEO, Karen Burke.
Good evening, Chair. Good evening, Board Directors.
if you would talk to me a little bit about our community partnerships, some of the work we've been doing. Partnerships, as you know, provide us with a lot of opportunities to invest back into our communities. And San Diego Community Power was recently awarded Business for Good San Diego's Community Partner of the Year Award. I'm very excited to receive that. And it also, of course, being December in San Diego, and this year we had the privilege of sponsoring the Starlight Parade in Chula Vista and in the December nights at Balboa Park. It's a pleasure to join thousands of our customers at these holiday events to officially kick off the holiday season. Next slide. In addition to our seasonal sponsorships, we've had several other opportunities to be in the community this past month. Last week, our very own COO, Jack Clark, provided an update on SDCP at the Imperial Beach City Council meeting. This past weekend, the team had the pleasure of attending the National Cities Community Breakfast. We heard updates from National City Police Department about their new solar-powered license plate reader system, and even got a special guest appearance from the recently promoted Vice Mayor of National City and our very own board member, Director Dita Siamane. That was great. We also have expanded our library outreach and have been at libraries across our service territory, including Chula Vista, National City, Imperial Beach, North Park, and La Mesa. Slide, please. Okay, we are still hiring, and I'm so glad you had the opportunity to meet our new team members tonight. Although hiring has slowed, we still have a few positions opening, and I think it may pick up again the next year. So I look forward to welcoming new members to our dream team. Next slide, please. All right, so finally, as we start to enjoy the holiday season and approach the new year, sort of been reflecting as a team on the wonderful things we've accomplished together this year. Yesterday, during our all hands meeting, we had the chance to highlight our successes and celebrate our milestones with each other. So I want to share just a few of those with you today. So this year we completed enrollment for National City and the unincorporated county of San Diego. And now we are serving almost 1 million customer meters. As we've expanded our service territory, we've also grown ourselves, growing from 29 employees at the start of 2023 to 53 today. We continue to work diligently to build our reserves, and this year we reached our 90-day cash on hand goal, just a little bit ahead of schedule. In 2023, we procured 348 megawatts of capacity and 227 megawatts of renewable generation. We participated in over 70 in-person events, connecting with nearly 250,000 individual customers. Our customer service team continues to be very active and a critical link through phone and email interactions. This year alone, our agents have connected on over 30,000 phone calls and responded to almost 2,000 emails within a 24-hour period once received. The work of our regulatory and legislative team, as you saw, has been crucial. And you heard tonight about the recent decision by the CPUC that will allow us to procure resource adequacy from SDG&E at fair market prices. We also completed our community power plan this year, seems like a long time ago. And from that, we have now started several key initiatives, the Community Grant Program, which we launched this year, the Electrification Marketplace, which we launched this year, and the Regional Energy Network, which we're now submitting for next year. There is so much work that goes across our team to bring cleaner, greener energy to our customers. And I'm really so grateful to our team, our board of directors, and our CAC members for their unwavering commitment to our mission. We have such an incredible team. I'm very honored and humbled and excited to be a part of this group as we move into 2024. Thank you all and happy holidays.
Thank you, Karen. Does our general counsel have anything to report?
I do not, Mr. Chair, except happy holidays, everybody.
Here we go. One last chance for our directors. Anything you want to? Not seeing any from the mayor.
Just happy holidays, everybody.
Okay, you're here. Absolutely. And I'll just say a big thank you to all the employees of San Diego Community Power, those that are here and those that are working hard. We really appreciate the good work you do. And it's quite evident by the response you get from the directors in supporting the initiatives you bring forward to the CEO, the COO, and everybody. We really appreciate it. So I look forward to a good year ahead. Everybody returning?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't get to decide that.
There's always that question mark. Actually, I know I'm returning. That was just approved, on Tuesday or Wednesday, so.
I know too, I'm returning, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
yeah, okay, great. All right, with that brings us to the end of our agenda, and I appreciate everyone's participation. We are adjourned until the next regular meeting of the Board of Directors of San Diego Community Power on January 18th, 2024. That's a week earlier than we would normally do.
Happy holidays.
So, happy holidays, Mayor.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Dr. Washington remotely there.
Yeah. So much.